Hey, what's up guys? Snarfy here, bringing you a video covering the system design in Diablo 4 Part 2. So let's go ahead and get into it. So Blizzard just posted this article a day or two ago, and let's go ahead and go through it here. In Part 1, we addressed many of the opening questions from the community about Diablo 4 game designs we revealed at BlizzCon. I recommend checking that out if you haven't already. Itemization is a huge core part of any action RPG. We're focusing specifically on itemization in this blog because it's a complex and nuanced topic. Let's start with two key principles that guide us as the Diablo 4 development team. So this is one of the reasons that I wanted to make the video is, gameplay is important, but action RPGs are really about treasure hunting, and so the itemization is probably the most important factor in this game being successful long term. I'm a huge fan of Diablo 2. In fact, the Diablo 2 ladder is resetting tomorrow, and I'm really hyped to play that. I played a lot of Diablo 3 when it first came out, but there wasn't too much depth to that game in terms of treasure hunting. And so hopefully they get it right with Diablo 4. So let's go ahead and continue. First, we all agree that adding depth and customization to your character through itemization is incredibly valuable and important to the game. This has been the most discussed topic since we revealed Diablo 4. To be clear, we believe Diablo 4 itemization should be deep and rewarding, and that's one of the highest priorities. Another important philosophy across the whole game for our team is the concept easy to learn, difficult to master. This core philosophy helped many of us become the hardcore gamers we are today, and one we want to embrace throughout the Diablo 4 development process. Second, we agree with the feedback that Diablo 4 shouldn't just mimic the itemization in our previous Diablo games. Our plan is to take the best parts of previous games and improve upon them while introducing new elements to make Diablo 4 unique. We don't want to create an exact copy of Diablo 2 or Diablo 3. It's worth calling out that. On this subject, there was a lot of mixed feedback and differing opinions, and we acknowledge that means there's no single approach that everyone in the community will agree upon. That said, thanks to your feedback, we have some potential changes we're actively discussing internally regarding itemization that we'd like to share with you today. Again, we feel it's important to stress that this is very early design, and we're sharing this with the community far sooner than we ever have before. There will be problems with these ideas we'll have to iterate through, and what's presented below is almost certainly not final. The reason we're sharing this so early is because we want to involve the community in our processes and in our process and learn as much as we can from your feedback as soon as possible. Let's get to it. Okay, so affixes in Diablo 4. We went through so much great community feedback, including a fair amount of conflicting feedback, and we've had dozens of hours of discussion on this topic. We were left with two major takeaways. First, item affixes should be a meaningful part of your character power. Second, they should create interesting choices when deciding which items to equip. Our previous focus was on making each affix geared toward specific builds, so that the quote-unquote perfect item would vary depending on the build you are pursuing. We still like this overall direction, but we understand it can also feel like your choices are limited because you end up chasing a list of best-in-slot items. Here are the changes we're considering. We're increasing the total number of affixes on items, including magic, blue, rare yellow, and legendary, orange. This should raise the overall importance of non-legendary affixes on your character's overall level of power. We're also introducing 3 new stats. Angelic Power, which increases the duration of beneficial effects, like self-buffs or healing. Demonic Power, which increases the duration of negative effects, like debuffs or damage over time. And Ancestral Power, which increases the chance on hit effects, aka increases proc chance. So that's pretty interesting. I like what they said about increasing the number of affixes on items so that you're not stuck, using a bunch of legendaries because the legendary affixes are so incredibly powerful. That was So like I said, I really, really love Diablo 2. And one of the things I think that made Diablo 2 so great was that there was sort of a like best in slot de facto item for a lot of slots, but if you actually looked at it, it was a little bit more nuanced than that. For example, the best in slot de facto helmet in Diablo 2 was Shaco. 2 to all skills, damage reduction, life, mana, super, super good hat. But if you got a rare circlet with insanely lucky rolls, it would actually be better than Shaco. You could get like a 2 to druid skills, faster cast rate, strength, life, all resist, something along those lines. Maybe 2 sockets, so you can like stick 2 bear runes in it, or like a bear cham, immune to frozen and damage reduction. So the actual best in slot item was a rare. Another example of this is the JMod Monarch. Not only was this the case for rares, but in certain instances, magic items were actually the best in slot item for certain builds. And one of those is the JMod Monarch. It was basically a magic monarch that had the deflecting mod. So it had a high block chance, and then it also had 4 sockets as the other magic affix on it. So you were able to stuff 4 facets into it if you were like an Amazon or a sorceress, or whatever, fire facets, cold facets, lightning facets. So you could get an incredible amount of like spell damage increase out of it, and you also had a high block chance on it. And it was one of the most like rare and valuable items in the game, and it was a simple magic item. So that's one thing that I really, really hope they take away in Diablo 4. Is I think one of the main problems in Diablo 3 was it was super, super cookie cutter. In Diablo 3, every season at the start, you would get whatever set that you were trying to do your build with. Like I really enjoyed the Fetish Army Witch Doctor build, and I also really enjoyed the Crusader Bombardment build. Like the Thorns Crusader. But basically, all you would do was get your set items for the build, and then you would get a few important legendaries for the build, and more or less your build was complete. There were no items that you could get in the game. Rares were completely worthless. Magic items were completely worthless. And you played the game hunting ancient versions of the same exact items you were already wearing. So it was not compelling gameplay. It was really, really lame. So I really hope, and it sounds like that they've kind of learned from their mistakes in Diablo 2, in Diablo 3, and where they were successful in Diablo 2, with for example, another example of rares being best in slot in Diablo 2 is you could get an insanely well-rolled amulet, although technically I think crafted amulets were best in slot, but you could get a 2 skills, faster cast rate, life, all resist, an amulet with a whole bunch of stats that you really, really want on it. Same for rare rings, Obviously, Stone of Jordan was a very, very powerful ring in Diablo 2, but it wasn't the ring that you necessarily wanted for all builds. Sometimes you wanted a rare ring with, usually, again, it's strength, life, all resist. Those were the really big stats on the rares. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue here. So these new stats can appear as affixes, such as 15 angelic power. In addition to providing the above stated benefit, we want these new stats to also act as prerequisites for empowering certain other affixes. If you don't have enough of a specific power, you can still equip the item, but you may not benefit from an affix linked to that power. Here are a couple of work-in-progress examples to better illustrate what the affixes do. Again, none of this is final. It gets changed considerably. So let's take a look here. We got some boots with a bunch of defense. They have angelic power on them. And then if you have, let's see, movement speed, cold resist. Okay, so if you have at least 50 demonic power, then you get +1 to your skill level in the skill Devastation. Okay, that's pretty interesting. And then we've got a rare amulet here. 15% critical strike damage, +2 ranks to Char of Ash, or Char to Ash. Requires 60 demonic power. And 25 fire resistance, requires 55 demonic power. 10% crushing blow chance. Ooh, crushing blow. It requires 55 ancestral power. Wow, this one's got a ton of power mods on it. That's kind of crazy. Each of these Each of the 3 powers will have a list of affixes that are attuned to it, so depending on which stats you care about, you might want to focus on angelic, demonic, or ancestral power. In the examples above, you would need 50 demonic power to get an additional rank in the devastation skill, 55 for the 25 fire resistance, 60 for an additional 2 ranks in charred ash. If you want to build around Crushing Blow, you need to stack at least 55 Ancestral Power instead, while 40 Angelic Power will be required to gain 25% cold resist. We think these changes will address those two main takeaways pretty well. Legendary powers should no longer completely dwarf the strength of your affixes, or strength to your affixes, and the affixes themselves provide more interesting choices because their strength depends on how much of the relevant powers you've accumulated on the rest of your gear. You might find an amulet with the perfect stats for your build, but some of its affixes may require demonic power when you've previously focused on ancestral. Maybe your current amulet is the primary source of your ancestral power, so equipping a new amulet would mean potentially making sacrifices elsewhere. This is really, really interesting, actually. With this system, it will be easy to identify items with good stats, but it will take some thought and planning to decide whether the item is good for your build. The best items for your character will really depend on what you currently have and how you've built that character, making it more difficult to just look up the right answer online. At the same time, we think this system keeps items approachable. Even if you make suboptimal itemization decisions, you may be weaker, but doing so won't completely break your character. We can also introduce this mechanic gradually and naturally as you level, rather than making it a requirement to understand at the beginning. Okay, so, well, basically, I think that last part just basically means that the mods start showing up on higher level items, and they can not have them on lower level items, so you're not completely overwhelmed as a beginner. So this system actually seems very, very intriguing to me. I really like the sound of where they're going with it. Again, you know, this is a really, really early, you know, in development, so we'll have to see where things build up to, where they take it. And one of the main concerns that I had when I initially saw the beta footage from the streams at BlizzCon was how a bunch of skills seem to be locked to certain, like, certain keys, or certain abilities were all kind of locked to each other, so you could only pick one out of the row of abilities. Although I think in the previous article that they put out, they kind of clarified that, hey, just like Diablo 3, there's going to be elective mode. You're not going to be stuck on this. The BlizzCon stuff was the game on rails, the game on training wheels. So you can select elective mode and you can do the build that you want. And one of the main concerns that I had regarding that was because I really was hyped when they announced the release of the Druid, and I love summoner classes in particular. My favorite character on Diablo 2 is the Summoner Bone Necro. My favorite character on Path of Diablo is the Summoner Druid. So I'm really hyped and hoping that you're going to be able to make a strong Druid Summoner pet build. And one of the concerns I had was kind of being locked out, because when I was looking at the skill tree, it looked like almost all the summons were in one specific row. And I was a little bit concerned that, you know, you can only have one summon out. But if the elective mode stuff is true, then I guess that's something that you don't need to be concerned about in the long run. And I think they've kind of alleviated my concerns with regard to that so far. Although, having said that, again, I'm really into the pet builds, and I don't know how they're going to make these affixes or these powers apply to, you know, the build that I'm interested in doing. Because, like, are the pets going to have bleeds, or are the pets going to have a whole bunch of beneficial effects, or will they have chance on hit effects? You know, I would be kind of concerned that if I went for a full pet build, summoner build, that I wouldn't be able to take advantage of any of the affixes, because I would just have a bunch of summons out and they would just be hitting the enemies, and I wouldn't really have any buffs. There's probably some buffs, but, you know, I don't know how substantial they are. Would I have any damage over time effects if I just have a bunch of pets attacking the mobs? would I have a bunch of chance on hit effects? I feel like, that's maybe unlikely. Again, this is really, really early in development, though, so I'm sure that they can kind of see that problem come up as they're developing the game, and they can modify the pets so that, most of the pets will do damage over time, or maybe a bunch of the pets will give a whole bunch of different beneficial buffs to you and to each other. So maybe you focus on angelic power or something. But overall, I think the direction they're going is pretty good. I like what I've seen so far in terms of what they've put out for information on how the game is going to develop. So let's go ahead and continue. Attack and defense changes. Based on your feedback, we've changed attack to only be found on weapons, defense only to be found on armor, and we've removed both attack and defense from jewelry entirely. The goal here is to better embrace the fantasy of each type of item. We like the attack and defense stats as a way to convey power progression on items. The core part of any ARPG is the quest for more power. Just as we have skill ranks, talent trees, character levels, and so forth, attack and defense allows us to reflect your power growth in items as well. To be clear, attack and defense is not the end of the story of an item's power, but it does fulfill the easy-to-learn, difficult-to-master design philosophy by giving players a broad sense of whether the item is an upgrade. Players who are optimizing their character will still need to take the additional affixes on the item into account, as their benefit to your build can outweigh the raw attack or defense of an item. Solely picking your items based on attack and defense will almost never be the optimal way to play, but it does provide a good starting point for newer players. It's important to reiterate here that items are just one part of a character's overall power. Our goal is to spread out power across different sources, including skill ranks, your character's level, talent trees, items, and the endgame character progression system, which, like everything else, is still in development. Okay, I don't really have too much to say about this section. I think it's probably good that they kind of, specify attack is on weapons and defense is on armor, because, that makes sense, right? You put on a bunch of armor, and you're more impenetrable to piercing attacks, slashing attacks, whatever, and you don't get more attack because you have some armor on. I guess you could like body slam somebody if you're wearing like plate mail, but like in general, you're not gonna be better at attacking somebody unless you have like a sword or a mace or a morning star or something like that. So I think I like that as well, and I definitely like that there's a whole bunch of different things that are kind of going to hopefully synergize. You got your talents, you've got your attack and defense on the gear, you've got your skill ranks on the gear, you've got legendary affixes, you've got your character level. So it seems like they're able to maybe build up a very, very complex scaling power progression system. Maybe not as complex as what you would find in Path of Exile, but I really like how the different systems can build off of each other, and you can really, really kind of, push the limits if you are really focused on your build and everything lines up, in the correct way, and you have all the correct items, all the correct legendary affixes, all that kind of stuff. All right, ancient legendary replacement. In our last post, we mentioned that we were looking for some potential changes to ancient items based on your feedback. We're going to remove ancient legendaries from the game in their current form entirely. This is a good thing. I think I never really liked legendary items, or ancient. Apologies, ancient set and ancient legendary items. I thought they were kind of stupid. Our newest proposal hits a couple different feedback points, addressing the usefulness of rare yellow items, as well as increasing the depth and complexity of player gearing choices in the endgame. Yeah, that's a good point, actually, because, again, in Diablo 3, the sheer power level of the set bonuses and the ancient affixes completely dwarfed rares to begin with, but then on top of that, if you got, like, an ancient version of a set item or of a legendary, it was just, like, there was no rare that could even come close, so magic and rare items were completely obsolete. Like, you just dusted every single thing, turned it into crafting mats, and I really, really hope to see them, take the Diablo 4 direction where you know, at least rares can be as valuable as legendaries or set items. You know, it would be nice if in certain nuanced niche instances magic items were also best in slot, but I'm not gonna really hold my breath for that. You know, kind of like the example I gave earlier of the J mod in Diablo 2. Um because there's so few magic affixes on magic items, I kind of think that that's kind of a pipe dream. But at least having the rare items, I think, would be really, really important for the game. You know, because on the top of you know, the J mod and the circlet, like rare circlets and things like that, you know, you could get like an insanely rolled ethereal weapon as best in slot for your melee character. You could get a weapon that's ethereal. It's with the highest level of the weapon. It's the elite version of the weapon. It's got like the cruel mod, so it has a ton of attack damage and attack power on it. And then ethereal means it can't be repaired, so that's a problem, right? But if it happens to roll the self-repair mod, then you don't have to worry about that. Or even if it doesn't, if it has enough attack mods that it's worthwhile to still use it, you can socket it and put a Zod in it to make it indestructible. So there were certain instances of rares being actually best in slot in Diablo 2, but there was no true best in slot because the likelihood of rolling all of the affixes correctly and rolling like max rolls on all of the affixes is just so absurdly low. Like that's what made treasure hunting. That's what makes treasure hunting in Diablo 2 and other action RPGs so compelling. Is that, you know, you can get really good gear after a while, but the chase for the god drop is always there, you know, and the likelihood of getting it is so absurdly low that you probably never even see it. But the chances out there that you can get something that is just insane, you know, and that kind of compels you to keep playing the game, right? So let's go ahead and continue here. We'll be introducing a new type of consumable item, which we haven't yet named. This item would be earned by killing monsters, just like other items. It would have one random legendary affix on it, drops only in the late game, and can be used to apply that affix to any non-legendary item. Oh, this is sick, dude. This is sick. This means a few things. We create an elective mode for items that is experienced after players have had time to learn to experience rare and legendary items normally, as well as familiarize themselves with a variety of affixes. This adds a way to introduce new methods of play without adding even more power to endgame items. Rare items with the best affixes on them are always useful and retain value. So, like I was just saying, this is actually perfect, because if you can apply a legendary mod onto a rare, that kind of means that you don't have to get the legendary. Like, you're not pigeonholed into using a legendary if you can get a godly rare roll. So this, I really, really like the way that they're taking this. That is like super hype. I'm really stoked about what they said here. So obviously rares are going to be valuable even at endgame. So that's really, really awesome. That's super cool. More feedback. We want to remind you one last time for good measure. None of this is final. We haven't even tried most of this in a working build yet. We'd love to get some constructive feedback on these approaches, as well as the general direction we're headed for itemization. We've never shared this level of detail this early before, but we look forward to reading what you have to say. Thanks. David Kim, lead system designer. Okay, so yeah, overall, this really kind of puts a lot of my concerns at rest. I mean, obviously, it's still very, very early in development, so a lot of things could change between now and when the Diablo 4 is released, but I really feel like they, based on what they've said in this article, that they've learned a lot from their mistakes in Diablo 3. I think they've probably also learned some lessons from, you know, other games like Path of Exile, and, you know, how excellent Diablo 2 was. You know, people still play that game. I'm hyped to play it again. Ladder resets tomorrow, so I'm going to be playing another Summon Necro. Super hyped for that. But yeah, again, it's really early in development, so none of this is final. I'm sure we'll see many, many changes by the time the game is released, but I am really hyped for it, and a lot of my concerns have been put to rest. I think that they understand a lot of where the problems were before and where the strengths of the ARPG genre are. So yeah, with that, let me know what you guys think in the comments. You know, do you like what they said in the article? Are you still concerned about some things? Are you excited? Do you have you lost faith in Blizzard? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching the video. Remember to comment, subscribe, like, and we'll see you next time. Peace.